It was an ordinary day in 2017. A construction worker was going about his job when he found something lying on the ground. At first, it didn't seem important. People lose things all the time. He picked it up, expecting to return it, but curiosity got the better of him. He unlocked the phone screen and started scrolling. At first, nothing unusual. Then he opened gallery. He kept scrolling through pictures after pictures until he found one that didn't make any sense to him. It was a man, posing in the picture, holding what looked like human remains. At first, the worker thought it was fake, a joke, or maybe a prop. But the longer he looked, the more real it became. Too real. Out of utter confusion and sheer curiosity, he showed the photo to others. But no one wanted to believe it, because believing it means accepting something far worse. That somewhere nearby, someone was not just killing, but keeping parts of their victims. Still, the images were reported, and eventually, they reached the police. Even then, the police were skeptical. After all, photos can be edited, and people create shock content all the time. But something about this particular photo felt different. So for the sake of their peace of mind, they decided they would look into it. They began investigations, and the phone was traced back to its original owner, a man named Dimitri, who lived nearby. Quiet, unremarkable, the kind of person you wouldn't look at twice. He wasn't hiding or running like a criminal. He was living his life like every other normal person you know. When the police approached him, he didn't react like someone that was guilty. He didn't panic. Collected and composed, he answered their questions calmly, as if nothing was wrong. Investigators decided to check out his home, and when they entered the apartment, they hoped to find a misunderstanding. Maybe a sick joke, something explainable, but instead, they found evidence, real evidence. Inside the home were containers, jars, packages, stored carefully, organized and preserved, and they contained human remains, body parts of his latest victim. Upon further investigations, it was noted that this wasn't chaotic violence. It wasn't impulsive. It was routine, methodical. There were signs that this had been going on not just once, but repeatedly over time, possibly for years. Can you imagine living in a neighborhood, saying hi to your neighbor every day, nodding politely? Meanwhile, in their home, they are living a completely different reality. Here's the part no one expected. He wasn't working alone. He had a partner, someone who lived in that same space, who saw the same things, who knew yet didn't stop it. And that person is his wife, Natalia. Apparently, they operated together. They lured their victims, hurt them, and eat them. As the investigators dug deeper, a disturbing possibility emerged. That what if this wasn't one victim? What if this wasn't recent? What if this had been happening for a long time? There were hints, unconfirmed reports, whispers of multiple victims up to 30, but the numbers didn't quite add up. And the timeline that stretched further back as far as 1999. But the truth was difficult to fully piece together. But the most scariest part of this story isn't just what they did, it's how they lived. They went outside, they interacted with people, they existed in plain sight. Nothing about them screamed danger. Nothing warned anyone, until a phone got in the wrong hands. If that phone had never been lost, nobody would have known anything. They would have still been living normally. In October 1972, a small plane carrying a Uruguayan rugby team set off across the Andes mountain. These were young men, friends, teammates. They were joking, relaxed, excited for the trip. No one on that plane thought they were in danger. The weather looked manageable, but the handies don't forgive mistakes. As the plane entered the mountains, visibility dropped. Clouds thickened, the pilots struggled to navigate. And then they made a fatal miscalculation. They believed they had already crossed the mountains, but they hadn't. The plane slammed into the mountainside. The impact tore it apart. People were thrown violently. Some died instantly, while some were injured. There were a few survivors, but they were alone in the mountains, completely alone. The survivors gathered what they could, scraps of food, bits of luggage, but it wasn't enough, not even close. They were stranded in freezing temperatures, no proper shelter, and no way to call for help. Days passed. They waited for rescue. They believed it would come, but it didn't. They ran out of food quickly. They tried eating anything they could find, leather, fabric, or even cotton. Nothing worked. Their bodies began to shut down. Dizziness, weakness. Some couldn't stand anymore, and then people started dying. The survivors faced something unthinkable. They were surrounded by bodies of their friends, their teammates, people they had laughed with just days before. One person asked the others that what if they used them? At first it was rejected. It felt unimaginable and unacceptable. But hunger doesn't care about morality. Eventually, they had to make a decision. Not all at once, but one by one, they eventually agreed. They started to cut small pieces from the bodies, frozen by the cold. Just when it couldn't get worse, an avalanche hit their makeshift shelter in the middle of the night, burying them in snow. Some suffocated before they could escape, while some were trapped there for days. After weeks, they discovered something horrifying. No one was coming. Rescue efforts had already been stopped, and they had been declared dead. So they made one final decision. If they wanted to leave, they had to leave. 2 of them volunteered to cross the mountains on foot, with no proper gear, no guarantee of survival, just hope. They walked for days through snow, but they kept going, because behind them were people waiting to die. And then, after 72 days, they found help. Rescue teams were sent. The helicopter reached the crash site, and one by one, the survivors were pulled out. 16 people survived, out of dozens. They returned home, but they were never the same.